One day, I'm going to read a poem on my phone, but I come up from the city every day, and by the time I get up here, my phone is dead. The battery's, and so it's just not, so someday when I have a Friday off, I promise I'll write a poem on my phone and read it to you. But in the meantime, I'm going to read a poem from my chapbook, Secret Histories and Exobiologies, published by the Poets Haven. I was going to read a different poem, which I thought took place in autumn, so it seems seasonally appropriate, but I looked at the poem, it turns out it takes place in spring. So I'm not sure what that's about. I may have to revise the poem. But Robert's poem inspired me to read some excerpts from a poem that I wrote, which also takes place in a peculiar sub-history of New York City. It's a long poem, so I'm only going to read a couple excerpts of it. It's called Tompkins Square Park, August 1988. And as with everything else that I write, everything in this is true, including the parts that never happened. So I'll just give you a little bit of, tell you what happens before this part, because it's as some of my poems are, it's a story poem. So the narrator is a young college student who's sent to find his boyhood friend Rochelle, who has disappeared into the squatter movement, the anarchist hippie squatter movement around Tompkins Square Park in 1988. He finds her, but she's having such a wonderful time that he can't bring himself to try to bring her back to Lexington, Massachusetts. So he stays with her for a while, and she kind of shows him the ropes. He helps fix things. He helps her paint placards. No housing, no peace, Lower East Side squatters, fuck all park rules, things like that. She introduces him to all the people in the squatter movement, Puerto Ricans from the neighborhood, the formerly homeless, hippies, punks, anarchists, Bronx refugees, families with kids. This section, which I will read to you, is called How It Went. It was hot as fuck in the apartment. There was no running water in our squat. We sponge bathed with a bucket of water and peed in another. It was important not to get the buckets confused. The clean water seduced me. The clean water was sexy and bohemian. It spoke of the body and love and possibility and freedom. And as I dipped my cloth into it, I could distantly hear the song of Rochelle's flesh, tinny like Chapman's song through the earphones on Rochelle's ears. The bucket of clean water embraced me and loved me with its cool caresses. The bucket of urine rebuked me. I mean, really, dude, really? It said. Are you stupid? You're an upper middle class kid with an expensive education and no student debt thanks to your bourgeois parents, and this is how you repay them, by pissing into a bucket. If you want to fuck the girl, just tell her. Stop trying to seduce her by pretending you're like her. You are not like her. Even she isn't like her, which you'll both find out soon enough once winter comes. You have a lot of opinions, I said, for a bucket of piss. The bucket didn't reply, just bubbled and simmered in the summer heat. Outside, the streets were crackling with energy, a lot of it positive, not all of it positive. There was an edge sometimes. Squatter movements bring out the best and the not so best. The park was filled with tents. The buildings around the park were mostly filled with squatters. Some of the squats were better than others. Some buildings were as good as a building where people paid rent. Better, actually, because the landlords in the neighborhood mostly sucked really bad. The squatters were the most responsible citizens around. Rochelle was one of them. I felt a little bit proud. Stanton Street Synagogue. One day, Rochelle showed me a nearby ancient synagogue on Stanton Street, Stars of David carved into its crumbling stone facade. Look, she said, this is where our grandparents worshipped when they came to America. I wasn't completely convinced it was the exact same synagogue, but I understood her point. How it ended in tears and tear gas. Rochelle and I finally made love one night. I'm not sure why that night exactly. We both sort of knew it was inevitable, but neither one of us wanted to make the first move for fear of misreading the other. Afterwards, Rochelle cried, which is often a bad sign. She said she feared she'd messed us up. She referred to us as a thing that existed almost outside of she and me as individuals. I held her, reassured her, and we made love again. The next day we stayed in and made love all day, and the rest of the week we mostly stayed in and made love again and again and again. There were no more tears. Rochelle laughed at my jokes and gasped. When I pleasured her, we began to get to know one another's intimacies. We, who had thought we knew it all already. I learned the rhythms and cadences and harmonies and key changes of her flesh. My song was pretty basic Tin Pan Alley, A-A-B-A. Solid, respectable, reliable, versatile, classically Jewish American, from Lieber and Stoller to Joey Ramone. Hers was something else entirely. Hers was Coltrane, a love supreme. It was pretty much everything I'd ever hoped it would be. I assumed Rochelle had overcome her doubts. Judging by the rhythm of her thighs in concert with mine, I had every reason to think she had. That night, we heard the noise and smelled the tear gas. The riots we knew were coming had started. Rochelle dressed to rush out and join them. I tried to convince her to stay in her squat with me. She looked at me like she didn't understand. I have to do this, she said. This is what I've been waiting for my whole life long. I knew then that what she said was true, and I knew that the song of her flesh, her body, her nakedness had sung that when I arrived those weeks before and during our most intimate of intimacies had not been for me. And that was when I knew that whatever we had, as much as I clung to it, was never going to last, and tonight probably marked its passing. Her flesh, which I had loved, and which even now, all these years later, I still believe had for a time loved me in return, was not made for loving me. Rochelle went out. I stayed in, and the breeze from the street billowed the bedsheet she'd hung in the window frames, bringing with it a soot-stained redolence of tear gas and fire. The next day, she hadn't come back. I waited for her for 3 days, the bucket of piss berating me the entire time. I wasn't sure if she was in jail or the hospital or what. I went to St. Vincent's, but I wasn't family. They wouldn't tell me if she was there or not. I knew no one had died in the riots. The papers told me that, so I figured she was probably okay and off doing her thing. And the rest of her journey was hers, and the rest of mine was mine. And her absence was telling me this. I said to the bucket of piss, "You are half right. I am not like her. But you are half wrong. Rochelle is Rochelle. And when winter comes, she will still be here or somewhere like it. And she will tough it out." The bucket of piss was silent. I'm not sure if it was shamed into silence or if it was just trying not to laugh at my naivete. So I put on my Izod shirt. I could hear the alligator breathe a sigh of relief as the shirt covered my nakedness. And my Adidas, took the subway to Penn Station, and hopped an Amtrak north. where I explained to her parents that Rochelle was not ready to come home. Thank you.